Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world obsessed with perfection. Picture perfect lives on social media, flawless appearances, spotless achievements. We're surrounded by a constant message: you're not enough until you're perfect. But what if I told you that your real strength doesn't come from being flawless, but from embracing your imperfections? True freedom comes when you stop chasing perfection and start living as your authentic self. It's time to stop hiding, shrinking, and editing ourselves to fit into an illusion. Because real beauty, real power, and real peace are found in your flaws. Let's talk about what it means to find freedom in your flaws and how letting go of perfectionism can change everything. Number 1, flaws are proof that you're human, not broken. We live in a culture that conditions us to see our flaws as defects, blemishes on an otherwise perfect design. From a young age, we're taught to correct, fix, hide, or improve the parts of ourselves that don't measure up to an imagined standard. Whether it's physical appearance, personality traits, emotional responses, or even our past mistakes, we often feel pressure to erase anything that makes us seem less than. But the truth is, flaws are not signs of failure. They're not proof that you're broken. They are proof that you're human, and being human means being real, being vulnerable, being imperfect, and still being worthy. You see, flaws are not the opposite of beauty or strength. They are the gateway to authenticity. When you try to erase your imperfections, you also erase your uniqueness. You lose the raw edges that make your story different from anyone else's. Every scar has a story. Every mistake has a lesson. Every insecurity, when faced with love and honesty, can lead to transformation. But only when we stop seeing flaws as something shameful and start seeing them as evidence of our humanity can we begin to live freely and fully. Think about it. When have you ever truly connected with someone who pretended to have it all together all the time? Most often, we bond with others through shared struggles, not shared perfection. We are drawn to people who are honest about their challenges because it makes us feel less alone in ours. So why is it so hard to give ourselves the same grace we so easily offer to others? Why do we hold ourselves to standards we'd never expect from anyone else? It's because perfectionism has taught us to fear being seen as weak. It has convinced us that making mistakes or not having all the answers somehow makes us unworthy. But that's a lie. You are not a machine. You are not supposed to operate without error. You are not a statue meant to stand still and flawless. You are a living, breathing, evolving person. That means you will make mistakes. You will feel things deeply. You will get it wrong sometimes, and that's okay. That's what makes you real. That's what makes you you. There's a quiet kind of courage in embracing your flaws. It means standing in your truth even when it's messy. It means acknowledging that you don't have it all figured out and being okay with that. It means refusing to shrink yourself to fit someone else's mold of perfection. It means accepting yourself as a work in progress and still believing in your worth, even in the midst of growth. This acceptance doesn't mean giving up on improvement or growth. It doesn't mean settling. It means loving yourself along the way, not just when you reach some imagined version of flawlessness. It means understanding that growth and self-love can exist side by side. You can want to do better and still be enough today. You can have rough edges and still be worthy of love. You can be imperfect and still be powerful. The people who truly inspire us are not perfect. They are real. They have battle scars. They've failed. They've fallen. But they've also gotten back up. They've chosen to keep going, to keep showing up, to keep believing in themselves even when the world gave them every reason not to. That's what makes them powerful, not perfection, but perseverance, not flawlessness, but faith in their ability to grow, faith in their own worth. Faith that being human is enough. When you embrace your flaws, you give others permission to do the same. You create space for honesty. You make room for healing. You allow relationships to deepen because they are built on truth, not image. And most importantly, you give yourself the freedom to breathe. You stop performing. You stop pretending. You stop living for the approval of others and start living in alignment with who you truly are. And that's where peace lives. Not in perfection, but in authenticity. There's something profoundly liberating about saying, "This is me. I'm not perfect. I have struggles. I have fears. I make mistakes, but I'm here. I'm trying, I'm learning, and I'm worthy of love. That's not weakness. That's power. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in life come from the moments we stop running from our flaws and start facing them with compassion. When we say, yes, I messed up, but that mistake taught me something valuable. Or yes, I have insecurities, but they don't define my worth. Or yes, I'm not everyone's idea of perfect, but I'm proud of who I'm becoming. Perfectionism wants to keep you in a prison of self-doubt. It wants to silence your voice until you feel polished enough to speak. But you don't need to wait until you're perfect to live your truth. You don't need to earn your worth. You already have it, flaws and all. And the moment you start living from that truth, everything begins to shift. You start setting healthier boundaries. You stop over-apologizing for your existence. You begin making choices that honor your well-being instead of your image. You begin showing up in rooms as your full self, not a filtered version. You begin trusting that you're enough, even on the days when you feel like a mess. So if you're carrying shame about your flaws, I want you to hear this. You are not broken, you are becoming. You are not a mistake. You are a masterpiece in progress. And the parts of you that feel unworthy right now may be the very parts that will one day help someone else feel seen, heard, and loved. You don't have to fix yourself to be lovable. You don't have to hide your imperfections to be respected. You just have to be brave enough to own your story, to show up, even if your voice shakes, even if your heart is still healing, even if you're scared of being judged. Because freedom begins when you stop trying to be perfect and start giving yourself permission to be human. That's where real life happens. That's where joy lives. That's where peace is born. So stand tall in your flaws. Wear them like the badges of experience they are. Speak your truth without apology. And remember, your flaws don't make you less. They make you real. And being real is the most powerful thing you can ever be. Number 2. Perfection is a moving target that keeps you trapped. Perfection is a seductive ideal. It whispers promises of love, approval, and worth. It tells us that if we could just be a little better, look better, do better, achieve more, then we'd finally feel enough. It convinces us that happiness is waiting at the end of some long, impossible-to-do list. And so we chase it. Day after day, we strive, hustle, and push ourselves toward a goal that keeps moving just out of reach. But here's the painful truth. Perfection is a moving target, and the more we chase it, the more trapped we become. We live in a world that constantly shifts the definition of what perfect even means. One moment, it's about being productive and achieving big things. The next, it's about having the perfect body, the perfect relationship, the perfect mindset, or the perfect home. It's always changing, always evolving, always just beyond where we are. And because perfection is defined by external standards, by other people, by trends, by comparison, it's never stable. The bar keeps rising, the target keeps shifting, and we're left exhausted, always reaching, never arriving. When you build your self-worth around being perfect, you step into a trap. It becomes dangerous to make mistakes, to rest, to show vulnerability. You begin to equate any flaw or failure with personal inadequacy. You fear judgment, rejection, and disappointment. So you start hiding parts of yourself, editing who you are to fit the mold. You become more focused on how things appear than how they truly feel. You silence your truth, stifle your creativity, and abandon your own needs in the name of being accepted. And yet, no matter how much you give, it never feels like enough. That's because perfectionism doesn't reward you. It drains you. It doesn't bring peace, it breeds anxiety. It turns every step forward into a reason to question yourself. Even when you achieve something great, it's not long before that inner critic pipes up again, asking, "What's next? Why didn't you do more? Why wasn't it better?" You can accomplish so much and still feel like a failure because perfectionism doesn't let you celebrate progress. It only points out the gaps, the flaws, the parts that could have been better, and in that mindset, rest becomes a sin. Slowing down feels like laziness. Admitting you're struggling feels like weakness. You begin to fear being found out. Like if people really knew how hard you were working to hold it all together, they wouldn't admire you, they'd judge you. So you keep the mask on, you keep pushing, you keep striving toward that ever-moving finish line. But the truth is, no matter how close you get to what you think perfection is, it won't satisfy you, because perfection isn't real. It's an illusion, a mirage that disappears the closer you get. The goalposts will always move. The voice that tells you you're not enough will always find new evidence. That's the trap. You can waste your entire life trying to be flawless and still end up feeling like a failure. It's important to understand that striving for excellence is not the same as perfectionism. There's nothing wrong with having goals, wanting to grow, or pushing yourself to be your best. But perfectionism doesn't come from a place of inspiration. It comes from fear. Fear of judgment, fear of not being good enough, fear of being unloved unless you perform, and fear is a terrible foundation to build a life on. Perfectionism keeps you stuck in your head, overthinking every decision, doubting every move. It paralyzes you. You might hesitate to start something new because you're afraid you won't do it perfectly. You might procrastinate because the pressure to get it just right is too overwhelming. You might avoid taking risks or putting yourself out there because you're terrified of failing or being seen as anything less than perfect. And so, life becomes smaller. You say no to opportunities. You stay silent when you want to speak up. You settle for less than you deserve because the fear of imperfection is greater than your desire to grow. This constant internal pressure also affects how you relate to others. You might start holding people to the same impossible standards you hold yourself to, becoming critical, impatient, or distant. Or you might feel isolated because no one really knows the real you, only the version you think they want to see. You begin to believe that love is conditional, that you must earn it by being flawless, and that belief keeps you in a loop of people, pleasing, overworking, and self-silencing. But the truth is, no one is perfect. No one has it all figured out. No one lives a mistake-free life. What we often admire in others is not their perfection. It's their authenticity, their courage, their honesty, their ability to show up despite their fears. That's what makes people powerful. Not because they are perfect, but because they are real. Because they've learned to live with their imperfections instead of being imprisoned by them. To escape the trap of perfectionism, you have to redefine what it means to be enough. You have to stop waiting until you have it all together to be proud of yourself, to feel joy, or to love your life. You have to start celebrating progress, not just outcomes. You have to learn to value effort, growth, and resilience over flawlessness. And most importantly, you have to make peace with being human. It takes courage to let go of the chase. It takes strength to say, "This is who I am right now, and that is enough." It takes wisdom to realize that imperfection is not a flaw. It's a feature of being alive. And once you do, everything starts to shift. You begin to move through life with more ease. You give yourself permission to rest. You become more open, more compassionate, more creative. You start taking risks because you no longer tie your worth to the outcome. You start living, not performing. So if you feel trapped in the cycle of not enoughness, if you're tired of chasing a goal that keeps running away from you, it's time to stop, breathe, come back to yourself. You don't need to be perfect to be powerful. You don't need to have it all figured out to be worthy. You are allowed to be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. You are allowed to be beautifully, wonderfully, imperfectly human. Freedom doesn't come from reaching some perfect version of yourself. It comes from accepting who you are, flaws and all, and choosing to live fully anyway. Let the target move. You don't need to follow it anymore. You have nothing to prove. You already are enough. Number 3. Authenticity builds real confidence, not just appearances. Authenticity is often misunderstood in a world that prioritizes image over integrity. We live in a time where appearances are everything: curated feeds, filtered photos, perfect smiles, polished answers. We're constantly told, both subtly and loudly, that who we are isn't enough unless it's wrapped in a flawless package. Confidence in this culture is often confused with charm, perfection, or the ability to present yourself well. But the truth is, real confidence doesn't come from how things look on the outside. It comes from authenticity, being deeply rooted in who you truly are, without needing to perform or pretend. When you live authentically, you stop living for approval. You no longer need validation from others to feel good about yourself. You find a quiet strength in knowing that you're not trying to be someone else. You're not trying to meet unrealistic standards or impress people who don't really know you. You're simply showing up as you are, honest, imperfect, but real. And that kind of presence carries a power that appearances never could. Because when your confidence is built on authenticity, it cannot be shaken by criticism, failure, or rejection. You know who you are, and that truth becomes your anchor. Authenticity means owning your story, even the parts you used to hide. It means showing up with your real voice, your real thoughts, your real feelings. It's not about being blunt or careless, but about being honest and aligned. When you live from that place, you naturally grow in self-respect. You begin to trust yourself more deeply because you're not betraying your values just to fit in. You're not molding yourself into what you think people want. You're choosing to be loyal to your truth, and that loyalty builds self-trust, and self-trust builds unshakable confidence. One of the greatest lies we're sold is that confidence comes from achieving external goals, being attractive, wealthy, popular, or successful by the world's standards. And while those things may boost your ego temporarily, they're fragile foundations. The moment something goes wrong, your looks change, your job ends, someone criticizes you, that kind of surface-level confidence can crumble. But when your confidence is rooted in authenticity, it grows stronger over time, because it's based on your inner truth, not external circumstances. Authenticity also liberates you from the exhausting burden of comparison. When you stop trying to be like someone else and embrace your own path, your energy shifts. Instead of competing, you start connecting. You start recognizing the beauty of diversity, the truth that everyone has their own strengths, timelines, and purpose. You don't have to be anyone else to matter. You don't have to shrink or shine depending on who's watching. You just have to be you, fully and unapologetically. That doesn't mean authenticity is always easy. In fact, it often requires more courage than conformity. It takes guts to say, "This is who I am," especially in a world that rewards masks. You might face judgment. You might lose people who only liked the version of you that played it safe. But what you gain is far more valuable. You gain peace of mind, deep relationships, and a life that actually feels like your own. You stop waking up with anxiety over how to please everyone. You stop questioning your worth every time something goes wrong. You begin to live with integrity, and that inner alignment becomes your source of real confidence. It's important to understand that confidence is not the absence of doubt or fear. Even the most authentic people feel afraid sometimes. The difference is, they don't let those fears dictate their identity. They don't shrink themselves to make others comfortable. They don't pretend to be flawless. Instead, they embrace vulnerability as part of the journey. They show up even when it's hard, and that, in itself, builds strength. Because every time you stand in your truth instead of running from it, you prove to yourself that you're enough. You don't need a perfect life to be confident. You don't need everyone's approval. You don't need to have it all together. You just need to get honest with yourself and with the world. The more you do that, the more your confidence becomes rooted in something real. And when your confidence is real, it radiates. People can feel the difference between someone who's trying to impress and someone who's standing in their truth. Real confidence doesn't need to shout. It speaks clearly, even in silence. It doesn't need to dominate. It simply exists without apology. Another powerful aspect of authenticity is that it creates permission for others to do the same. When you show up as your real self, you give others the courage to lower their masks. You inspire honesty. You create deeper conversations, stronger connections, and more meaningful impact. You stop playing roles and start forming relationships. You stop striving to fit in and start belonging, because true belonging only happens when you're accepted as your whole self. Authenticity also brings clarity. When you know who you are, you start making decisions that align with your values. You stop chasing things that don't fulfill you. You become less reactive to the noise around you. You're not swayed by every opinion or trend because you've done the inner work to know what matters to you. That clarity empowers you to lead your life with confidence, not arrogance, but assurance. Assurance that you're walking your path with purpose, even if it doesn't look like anyone else's. So if you're struggling with confidence, don't look outward. Look inward. Ask yourself where you've been hiding, where you've been pretending, where you've been seeking validation instead of truth. Then start peeling away the layers, not to become someone new, but to return to who you were before the world told you to be someone else. You don't need to wear a mask to be loved. You don't need to achieve perfection to be respected. You don't need to chase approval to feel valuable. Who you are right now, in this moment, is enough. And the more you live from that truth, the more unshakable your confidence becomes. So stop editing yourself for a world that doesn't even know your heart. Stop trading your truth for temporary acceptance. Start living from the inside out, because real confidence doesn't come from how others see you. It comes from how deeply you've learned to see and accept yourself. Authenticity is the soil in which true confidence grows. And when you root yourself in who you are, not who you think you should be, you become free, free to speak, free to create, free to connect, free to lead. And most importantly, free to live a life that actually belongs to you. Number 4, self-compassion is the antidote to perfectionism. Perfectionism is a silent, heavy burden. It masquerades as ambition, disguises itself as high standards, and often convinces us that our worth is tied to our performance. It whispers lies, that we're only lovable when we succeed, only valuable when we're flawless, and only worthy when we meet every expectation, both external and internal. But what makes perfectionism so dangerous is how it erodes our self-worth over time. It doesn't just push us to do better, it punishes us for not already being perfect. And that's where self-compassion becomes not just helpful, but necessary. Self-compassion is the antidote to perfectionism because it meets our harsh inner critic with kindness, patience, and grace. At the core of perfectionism is fear, fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. It often develops as a coping mechanism, a way to protect ourselves from pain or rejection. If we can just be perfect, maybe we won't get hurt. If we never mess up, maybe no one will criticize us. But perfectionism doesn't protect us, it isolates us. It cuts us off from joy, spontaneity, creativity, and even connection with others. We begin to equate mistakes with shame, flaws with unworthiness, and setbacks with personal failure. That's where self-compassion comes in to break the cycle. Self-compassion is not about letting ourselves off the hook. It's not an excuse for mediocrity, laziness, or complacency. Rather, it's a radical and courageous choice to be kind to ourselves, especially when we fall short. It's the decision to stop beating ourselves up and start supporting ourselves through the hard moments. It's looking in the mirror and saying, I'm human, I'm doing my best, and even though I'm not perfect, I still deserve love, respect, and care. One of the biggest differences between self-compassion and perfectionism is how each responds to failure. Perfectionism screams, you're not good enough. You should have known better. You're a disappointment. Self-compassion gently says, it's okay. Mistakes are a part of learning. You're growing. You're still worthy. That shift in tone may seem small, but it has the power to transform everything. Because how you speak to yourself becomes how you feel about yourself. And how you feel about yourself determines how you move through the world. Self-compassion allows us to fail forward. It creates space for learning rather than shame. It allows us to own our imperfections without letting them define us. Instead of hiding our struggles, we begin to see them as part of our shared human experience. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has fears. Everyone has moments of doubt. And when we accept that we're not alone, we begin to heal. The truth is, self-compassion isn't always easy. For many of us, being kind to ourselves feels unnatural. We've been conditioned to believe that self-criticism is necessary to stay motivated, that we need to be hard on ourselves to get results. But research shows the opposite is true. People who practice self-compassion are not only more resilient, but also more motivated, more consistent, and more emotionally healthy. Why? Because when we feel safe and supported, we're more willing to take risks. We're more open to growth. We're not paralyzed by the fear of making mistakes, because we know that we'll treat ourselves with understanding no matter what happens. One of the most powerful aspects of self-compassion is that it teaches us to become our own safe space. Instead of seeking constant validation from the outside, we start to find stability within. We become less reactive to criticism because we're no longer relying on external approval to feel okay. We start making decisions that honor our values rather than our fears. We begin to trust ourselves, not because we're perfect, but because we've learned to love ourselves in the process of becoming. Practicing self-compassion is a daily choice. It means catching yourself in those moments of self-judgment and choosing a gentler response. It means asking yourself, what would I say to a friend in this situation? And then offering that same kindness to yourself. It means slowing down when you're overwhelmed, instead of pushing through just to meet some imaginary standard. It means giving yourself permission to rest, to feel, to try again. It means believing that you're already enough even as you strive to grow. It also means embracing your own humanity, the mess, the contradictions, the imperfections. It means acknowledging that you're a work in progress and that progress doesn't always look like a straight line. There will be days when you fall back into perfectionistic patterns, days when your inner critic is loud and relentless. But with self-compassion, you learn to respond to those days with patience instead of punishment. You learn to start again without shame. As you grow in self-compassion, you also become more compassionate toward others. You start seeing their flaws with softer eyes. You become less judgmental, more empathetic. Because when you've learned to hold space for your own humanity, it becomes easier to hold space for someone else's. Relationships deepen not because everyone is perfect, but because there's room for imperfection. The journey away from perfectionism is not about giving up. It's about letting go. Letting go of the need to always be right. Letting go of the belief that you have to earn your worth. Letting go of the illusion that one day you'll finally be good enough. Once everything is fixed, self-compassion gently reminds you that you already are. Not because you've done everything right, but because you are human and that is enough. You don't need to be flawless to be lovable. You don't need to have it all figured out to be respected. You don't need to be everything to everyone. What you need is grace. Grace for your missteps, grace for your doubts, grace for your process. And that grace begins with you. So take a breath. Let go of the crushing pressure to be perfect. Allow yourself to be seen, not as a polished version, but as your true self. Speak to yourself like someone worth caring for. Treat your heart like it matters, because it does. And as you offer yourself compassion instead of criticism, you'll discover something deeper than confidence or control. You'll find peace, you'll find freedom, you'll find the strength to move forward. Not because you're perfect, but because you're loved. So today, stop chasing the illusion of perfection. Let it go. Choose to be real. Choose to show up messy, honest, and whole. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful. You just have to be you, and that is more than enough. God bless you.